Okay, so we will be discussing in this session. This is a session on inheritance, and we have discussed about inheritance in the previous session also. We will continue from what we have discussed and from where we have left. So first of all, we'll quickly see what is inheritance. So inheritance is a feature of object-oriented programming where we create a new class and we inherit it from the previously existing class, and we do it by using the extends keyword. As you can see in the example, there is a class C2 extends C1. Here it means that C1 is the parent class and C2 is the child class. And why do we inherit? There are a lot of advantages of using inheritance, because inheritance helps in reusability of code and software development becomes easier. This we have already discussed. And private members of class are never inherited to the child class. Now let us move on to the next topic, that is types of inheritance which are supported in Java. Usually there are five types of inheritance, but some of the inheritance are supported in Java, some of the inheritance are not supported in Java. So we'll see to it what we can do in Java and what we cannot do in Java, and what we can do in Java in some different forms. Like in C++, usually we compare Java with C++. So in C++, there are usually five types of inheritance, but in Java, let us see what are the different types of inheritance that we can choose. First of all, it is single level inheritance. In single level inheritance, as you can see in the diagram, there will be a class A, which will be a base class or the parent class. And from the class A, we will derive a class B, child class will be created. So class B will be child class and class A will be parent class, and the inheritance will be only at one level. So it is called single level inheritance. You can see, for example, class C1, and then we have class C2, which is extending class C1. So here the level of inheritance is only one. So this is called single level inheritance. Then we will move on to the second level, that is called multi-level inheritance. In multi-level inheritance, what happens? It is extension of the single level. From the single level, from the child class, if we inherit another child class, then it becomes multi-level. When the inheritance is at more than one level, it is called multi-level. It can be at two level, and that you can see in the diagram here. Class B extends class A and class C extends class B. So it is two level of inheritance. This is called multi-level. The inheritance may go on to class D, E, F, any level. Now, if we can see the syntax, class C1 is the parent class. Then we create a class C2, which is the child class of C1. So what will happen? All the features of class C1 will also be available in class C2. Now we create class C3 from class C2. So all the features of C1 and C2 will be available in class C3 as well. And this can go on. We can create class C4, which will extend class C3. So this will be called a multi-level inheritance. Now, then there is a hierarchical inheritance. In hierarchical inheritance, multiple child class are created. Here you can see in multi-level inheritance, there is only one child class. Each class has one child class. Class A has one child class B, class B has one child class C. But if at certain level of inheritance, a class has more than one child, then it is called hierarchical inheritance. In this, what will happen? Class B is also the direct child of class A, and class C is also direct child of class A. So if we can see in the syntax, we have a class C1, we extend class C2 extends C1, and class C3 also extends C1. So C2 is the child of C1 and C3 is also the child of C1. But in this case, you can see class C2 is child of C1 and class C3 is child of C2. So this is the difference. We can see here class C2 is the child of C1 and only one level of inheritance. This is called single level. In single level inheritance, one child class is inherited by one parent or base class only. In multi-level inheritance, there are levels in derived classes. A derived class is created from another derived class. We create a derived class of the child class and we create another derived class from the child class. So in this case, class C is the grandchild of class A or we can see class A is the grandparent of class C. For class C, class B is the parent and class A is the grandparent. And reverse, we can say that class B is the child of class A and class C is the grandchild of class A. And how we create this is the syntax: class C1, then we have class C2, which is extending C1, and class C3, which is extending C2. And in hierarchical inheritance, in this type of inheritance, more than one subclass is inherited from a single base class. That is, more than one derived class is created from a single base class. Here, if we have class C1 as the base class, so C2 is also extending C1, C3 is also extending C1, and this may continue. There can be one more class C4, which is extending C1. So this is more than one child class, multiple child class, at least two. It is not necessary that it will have only two. It can have three, four, five, any number. Then there is a multiple inheritance. What happens in multiple inheritance? It is the reverse of hierarchical, where more than one parent class exists for a child. So if we have more than one parent in for a particular child, then this is called multiple inheritance. In hierarchical, you can see what is hierarchical. In hierarchical, there is more than one child from a single parent, and in multiple, there are more than one parent for a single child. But this multiple inheritance is not directly allowed in Java. In Java, child class cannot have more than one parent class. Multiple inheritance is not allowed in Java. That means we cannot write class C1 extends C2, comma C3, comma C4. This will not be valid because more than one parent is not allowed in Java. So if it is required, if there is a situation where a class is represented by more than one parent, then there is another feature in Java which we will be learning, that is called interface. So instead of class, there we use interface, but directly multiple inheritance is not allowed in Java. In in interviews, usually it is asked what are the different types of inheritance which are not supported in Java or which are supported in Java. So we have to say that in Java, single level inheritance is supported, multi-level inheritance is supported, hierarchical inheritance is supported, but multiple inheritance is not supported. But if it is required, then in Java, multiple inheritance can be done indirectly via interface, which we will be learning shortly. Now let us see one example at least for each of these different types of inheritance. So we'll be starting with single level inheritance. So single level inheritance, let us come to the VS Code. And here you can see we have a class C1. In this class, we have a function F1 and we have a function F2, but this is private. As we have discussed, that private is not inherited. Let us remove this for now. So class C1 has a function F1, class C2 has a function. Let us make it F2. So this is F2 function of class C2. So C1 becomes parent of class C2. And now if we can see in the main function, we have the object of class C2, and this object of class C2 is able to use both the functions. F1 function is not in the class C2, but it is in the class C1. But since we have inherited C1 in the class C2, what will happen? The F1 function will also be visible, available to be used by the object of C2 class. This is the feature of inheritance. So if I compile it, if I run this program, what will be the output? First of all, F1 function will be called. So it will print F1 of C1, then F2 function will be called, which is called F2 of C2. Now let us compile it. And you can see the output here, the F1 of C1 and F2 of C2. So this is an example of single level inheritance. Now let us quickly move on to multi-level inheritance. I'll create another file, example2.java. I'll copy everything from this class. I'll put it here. I'll name it as example 2 because this is example 2 file. And this is the example of multi-level inheritance. So let me quickly put in a comment that this is an example of multi-level inheritance. As an example of multi-level inheritance, we have class C1. You can see this class C1. We have already used it in the previous example. So this is class C1. Then we have a class C2. And now we create class C3. And this class will extend C2 since we are creating the child of C2. So you can see now class C3 is the child class of C2 that is in capital. So class C1 is the grandparent class C2 is the parent class, and class C3 is the child. So this is here we can say that C2 is the child of C3 rather. C3 is the child of C2, and here we can say that C2 is the C2 is the child of class C1. So C2 is the child of class C1. So F1 will be available here for C2 class. And now we are creating a class C2 with this child C3, which is child of C2. So let us create one function in this and we'll name it F3. This is F3 of class C3. Now what will happen? If we create an object of C3 class, if we create an object of C3 class, so we can call F1 function, we can call F2 function, and we can also call the F3 function, obj.f3. So this is an example of multi-level inheritance, wherein C3 class, which is the grandchild class, will get all the functions from its parents and grandparent. So F2 is coming from its parent and F3 is coming from its grandparent. So F2 function is from parent class C2 and F1 function is from grandparent class C1. So all the variables and functions of parent as well as grandparent classes will be available in C3 class object. So when we are creating C3 class object, we will be getting the this all functions from parent and grandparent, and the object can use these. So now if I run this program, uh, let us see what is the output coming. You can see F1 of C1, F2 of C2, and F3 of C3. So we can call all these functions. So what is happening in this example? In this example, this is an example of multi-level inheritance. We have multiple level of inheritance. One class is extending another class, that class is again extending. So this is an example of multi-level inheritance. Now I'll quickly create one more file, and that will be example of hierarchical inheritance. So I'll quickly copy everything from this file. I'll put it here. I'll rename it to example 3 as the file name is example 3. And now This is example of hierarchical inheritance. So in hierarchical inheritance, one, what happens? There are more than one child class, more than one child from a single parent. If a parent has more than one child class, then it is called hierarchical inheritance. So C1 is the parent, C2 is the child, and C3 is also the child of C1. So this is the case here. C3 is not the child of C2, but C3 is also the child of C1. So in this case, you can see C1 class has two child, C2 as well as C3. So the function of C1 will be available in C2 and the function of C1 will be available in C3 also. Now if we run this program, what has to be changed here? So what we will do, create object of C2 class obj2 is equals to new C2, and this obj2 can call its parent function f1, and this obj2 can also call its own function f2. And when we create object of another child C3, let us name the object as obj3. So obj3 can also call its parent, and obj3 will also call its own function, that is function 3. So here you can see, let us concentrate that C2 and C3 both are the child classes of C1 class, and C1 class has a function f1. So when we create the object of C2 class, you can see when we create the object of C2 class, what is the name of the object? Is obj2. So this object can have the function f1, which is coming from its parent, and also the function f2, which is its own function. So f2 will be called, and also f1 is available to be used. And similarly, when we create object of C3 class, so what will happen when we create object of C3 class, it can call its function from parent, and it can also call its function, its own function. So this is the example of hierarchical inheritance. So these are the three types of inheritance which are supported in Java. First inheritance is the single level inheritance. Second inheritance is the uh, multi-level inheritance, and third inheritance is the, you can see, it is the hierarchical inheritance. So I properly commented also, and here I'll put the comment once again. This is example of single level inheritance. Now, the other form, the fourth type of inheritance, which is multiple inheritance, we'll not discuss today, because for that we have to first learn in interfaces. We'll see interfaces in the coming session. But one topic we have to discuss here is about protected keyword. You might be remembering when we were discussing the different types of private, public, and these keywords. These are called access specifiers. So we discuss about a protected keyword also, and we discuss that protected keyword can only be used in inheritance. It is like a private private access modifier, but its value is can be, and its access level can be understood in inheritance. So today we'll see the use of protected inheritance. So I'll quickly create one more file that will be example 4.java. And in example 4.java, I'll copy everything from this file so that we'll save some time. I'll copy it here. I'll paste it here. And this is example 4. And why we are learning example 4? We want to see the private, protected, and public once again. So protected access space. Now we'll see private, protected, and public once again. In this example, as you can see, we have a function that is private. Then I'll quickly create another function that is protected. And we'll have this protected function named as F2. This is F2 function. And then we will have one more function that is public. So we have this public function F3. And this is F3 of C1. So if we do not have this child class, I'll put a comment. So this is not available for processing right now. I've removed this from the program. So we have only one class C1 and we have private, protected, and public. Now, if we create an object of C1, if we create an object of C1, what will happen? This F1 function is not available, and we can see that obj dot is F2 function available. Let us see, and then we have F3 function. So this class C1 has three functions, F1, F2, F3. One is private, another is protected, another is public. And we are not using inheritance as of now. We are just creating one object of class C1 and we are trying to call this F1, F2, and F3, and let us see what is happening. So the first error is showing that method F1 is not accessible. It is not visible here. That means we cannot use this F1 function from the outside the class. Now let me compile it. No such method error. You can see there is an exception in thread main. Java.lang, no such method. C1 does not has F2. Now, what is this? Why this error is coming? Because this has been declared as protected. So a protected function is not visible outside the class. This F1 is not visible and F2 is also not visible. So when we write it here, this is again giving error. So that means we cannot use it from outside the class. Now let me compile it again, and no such method error. F3 is also not coming. Let us see what is happening here. Let me rename it to C11. Let me quickly do it again. We have a class C11. We have a private function, a protected function, and a public function. As soon as we write F1 here, you can see this has become red. That means this file has some error. This is already showing F1. Method F1 is not visible. So we cannot write it this way. So I have to remove it. And as soon as I remove it, you can see the red color has gone. Now it is calling F2 of C1 and F3 of C1. So F2 of C1 and F3 of C1, both these functions are getting invoked. That means for this particular situation, we do not have any difference in F1, F2, and F3. F1 we cannot use, there is no difference in F2 and F3. Now I write one more program. Just I'll create one more example, 5.java, and I'll copy everything from here. I'll put it here. I'll rename this to example 5. And now I'll open this comment. I want to inherit. That means class C22, maybe I'll create C22, is a child class of C11. C11 is the parent of C22. And we have a function, suppose F4, and this is F4 of C2. Now, when we create the object of C22, we'll see what all we can access. So F1 is not visible again. We cannot use F1. F2 says is visible. F3 is also visible. And can we call obj dot F4 also? So F4 is also visible. Now, if I run this program, method F1 was never used locally. Let me see what mistake. This is not to be used. F2, F3, and F4 all are getting a visibility level and we can use it. So in inheritance, when we are inheriting it, even if we have protected or public, so these are same. In without inheritance also, you can see this is the example where we do not have any child classes. I have already removed this. I am using Visual Studio, as you can see, to compile, and protected access specifier, as you can see. When we declare something as protected and there's no inheritance, it is acting as a public here in this particular situation. And when we move to inheritance, that means we are creating a child class. So in the child class, since it is getting treated as public, it can be called from the child class object as well. So this is about protected. So we will rarely using protected. What we will be using our projects are usually private and public. Seldom do we use protected because it has not got very important meaning as you can see it here. So we'll move on to new topic of interface in the coming session. Meanwhile, I'll be sharing these programs and the concept of inheritance that we have discussed, the theory also, and you can go through them and try to run these programs, try to understand the concepts, because these will be very much required when as soon as we develop the project in it. And we, as you must be knowing, that Java has a lot of use in these days. Java is being used for Android app development also. So once you become familiar with all these things, you'll be able to become Android app developer also. Java is the core language there also. also. Plus, Java independently can also be used for many types of projects. And these concepts that we are learning through small programs are very important to clear all the concepts, because later on when will be doing projects, we'll not discuss these features. Instead, we'll be concentrating more on the projects. Thank you very much.